The sequester started, and the sun is still shining, and the sky didn't fall over the weekend, even though budget cuts went into effect in Washington.
But those cuts may get Democrats and Republicans talking about preventing a real crisis in the future. Ephraim Graham has the story.
Both parties continue to blame the other for the automatic spending cuts that hit on March 1st. But the $85 billion across-the-board cuts may be the wake-up call Washington needed. Republican and Democratic leaders pledged to undo the cuts to avoid a fiscal crisis. The White House signaled it might be ready to explore a compromise. President Obama raised the issue of cutting entitlements like Medicare and Social Security as a way out of the budget cuts.
Well, I'll tell you this, he's reaching out to Democrats who understand we have to make serious progress on long-term entitlement reform, and Republicans who realize that if we have that type of entitlement reform, they'd be willing to have tax reform that raises revenues to lower the deficit.
Republicans have long argued entitlement reform is the best way to tackle the budget deficits long term.
What I would like to see happen is that the president and Republicans and Democrats re-engage where they left off with the Boehner, that we as Republicans put $600 billion, somewhere in that neighborhood, of new revenue on the table by flattening the tax code, eliminating deductions and exemptions, take that money to pay down debt and lower rates, and we go to where the real money is over time, entitlement reform, to save us from becoming Greece.
If no alternative is found for the cuts that are now in place, the $85 billion in spending cuts must be carried out by September 30th, the end of the fiscal year.
I've been here for 22 years, and I've watched presidents from both parties, I've watched leaders from both parties kick this can down the road, kick it down the road, and kick it down the road. We're out of road to kick the can down.
All of this comes ahead of a new March 27th deadline that could mean a government shutdown and a debt ceiling battle coming in May. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Ladies and gentlemen, the significant problem is that we have a president whose goal, beyond a doubt, is to disrupt the unity of the Republican-led House of Representatives, put them into disarray, and then defeat them in the next election so that there will be a Democratic Senate, Democratic House, and Democratic White House. And then all those things that he wants to do can be put into place. It's the progressive agenda, and it has nothing to do about fixing the financial problems that we have. If he had wanted to do that, he would have adopted the Simpson-Bowles recommendations, his own committee that he established. He ignored totally, and it was filled with very wise prescriptions to get this fiscal house in order, but he hadn't wanted to do it. Maybe, now that all this bluster is over, things might get better. Terry, I'm hopeful.
Do you think it's too late that he might go back and reconsider some of that?
Oh, I mean, he's a campaigner. He likes to campaign. He loves to hear the sound of his own voice. He loves his own rhetoric, and he thinks that he can sway the people. And this last time out, he's failed, and he's dipping in the polls. The Gallup polls got him under 50%, about 46% or so now, approval ratings. So I don't know if he's got his eye on his legacy or whether he cares about that.
Well, you know, Boehner, I think, hit the nail on the head. It's not just this president. It's been president after president after president on both sides. Unfortunately, right now, this is the guy where the buck stops and something's got to be done.
Well, it's unsustainable, and we'll be looking at $20 trillion, and it staggers belief. But all the waste that's there, why they can't cut waste and duplication just for starters? I mean, they don't have to. And this Keystone Pipeline, they should have approved that right off the bat. It's been sitting in limbo for several years. It's a no-brainer again. It'll help the economy. It'll put people to work. I don't know. Well, the budget cuts aren't stopping the White House from sending millions of dollars in aid to Egypt. Lee Webb has that story from the CBN newsroom.
Yeah, the question is, Pat, where'd they get this money? Secretary of State John Kerry announcing that the U.S. is giving Egypt $250 million in aid to support that country's, quote, future as a democracy. The aid comes following Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi's promises of political and economic reforms. Kerry says the Obama administration will keep a close eye on Morsi, and he said any future aid would depend on Morsi keeping those commitments. Kerry's visit to Egypt was somewhat rocky. This was the scene on the streets of Cairo when he visited the Egyptian Foreign Ministry Saturday. Kerry talked about the country's upcoming election, but it seems demonstrators were more interested in Kerry's support of Morsi.
We are against the visit of John Kerry to Egypt. We disagree with all what he's coming with, all the solutions. We refuse it tightly, completely, because actually they support Mohamed Morsi. He is against democracy.
We will have an in-depth look at President Morsi and his history and his membership in the Muslim Brotherhood coming up in just a few minutes here on the 700 Club. Pat?
The thing that worries me more than a few $1 million, because we haven't got the money, but if we took a couple $100 million to give to Egypt, we're sending them advanced fighter planes, and you ask yourself, what are they going to use advanced fighter airplanes to do? Who are they going to fight? Are they going to fight the Sudan? Are they going to fight Libya? No, they're going to fight Israel. Why? Israel's not going to invade Egypt. And yet, we, the United States, is selling these very advanced planes, and I imagine they're being sold on credit, so we're not going to get paid for them. Lee?
Pat, scientists say a baby born with the AIDS virus has been cured of the disease. The child and her HIV-infected mother were treated at Jackson Medical Center in Mississippi. Doctors prescribed an aggressive treatment of 3 medications. Doctors lost track of the mother and her child for 1 year. When they finally found them, they discovered the mother had stopped giving her child the medication. They also found that the girl, who is now 2.5, remained healthy without the drugs. The early intervention appears to have knocked the virus out of the baby's blood system.
We have, perhaps inadvertently, but in fact, cured the child.
Amazing. If the child does remain healthy, it would mark the world's second reported medical cure of HIV. Pro-life groups in Maryland are hoping state regulators there will revoke an abortion provider's medical license. They're also calling on authorities to charge Dr. Leroy Carhart with murder after one of his patients died in his care. Heather Sells has that story.
The state of Maryland is investigating the death of 29-year-old Jennifer Morbelli. She died February 7th, just days after receiving an abortion from late-term abortion doctor Leroy Carhart. An initial medical examiner's report shows she suffered from a complication related to childbirth in which amniotic fluid was pushed into her bloodstream. Now Operation Rescue is seeking second-degree murder charges against Carhart, saying Morbelli's family was unable to reach him as her condition worsened, and that he in fact had left town.
There was no one for the family to contact when her condition began to deteriorate back at the hotel. She was not properly monitored. They knew it.
And he left for Nebraska, and later that evening she was bleeding profusely, and she had to go to the nearby hospital.
Montgomery County Police say their investigation into Morbelli's death remains active while they wait for the full autopsy report. Pro-life groups also want the Maryland Board of Physicians to revoke Carhart's medical license. Some protesters recently stood vigil outside the building while the board met. More than 1,300 people have signed a petition online asking the board to take action. Heather Sells, CBN News.
The Maryland Examiner's Office says a full autopsy report takes 60 to 90 days to complete. Israel is on alert for locusts. Swarms of the destructive bugs are descending on neighboring Egypt ahead of the Passover holiday. Israel's agriculture ministry set up an emergency hotline and is asking Israelis to be vigilant in reporting locust sightings to prevent an outbreak. Locusts have a devastating effect, obviously, on agriculture. In the Bible, locusts were one of the 10 plagues God sent to Egypt when Pharaoh refused to release Israel from slavery. Thousands took to the streets of Jerusalem recently, not to protest, but run. Here's the story now from CBN's John Waggy.
It was a chilly morning, but that didn't stop athletes from running in the 3rd annual Jerusalem Marathon.
Our first marathon.
Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat also takes part.
We have a wonderful event, very special. The city is looking forward to see so many runners, 20,000 runners. in Jerusalem, and we're very excited.
He says 3,000 years of history makes this event unique.
It goes in the old city, out the old city. You see the beautiful sights of Jerusalem. Most people come not only for the running event, but also to spend some time in Jerusalem.
Almost 2,000 runners from 52 nations joined 18,000 Israelis for the race.
And here is the nicest place to run. It's a combination of many different things, and it makes it very nice.
I run in Berlin, I run in Cologne, all over in Germany, but not in such an exciting and historical scene like here.
And at one point, some unexpected visitors joined in the fun. The Bible says Jerusalem is like a city set on a hill, which adds to the challenge.
It's a great course. It's tough. It's hilly, very hilly, but the course is beautiful. It's like going through a tourist bus.
And some ran with a message.
I thought about running with a message, and I love God is love.
We are a big group from Hungary. We would like to support Israel, that Jerusalem is the only undividable capital city of Israel.
And others?
Because it's Jerusalem. Because it's a half marathon in Jerusalem.
This is where, God came to the world. To run a marathon here, especially through the old city, it's beyond our comprehension.
Barkat says the marathon helps broaden Jerusalem's appeal.
We have integration of spiritualism, sportive event, communal event. All that together makes the Jerusalem Marathon a unique experience.
He predicts this year's participants will go home as ambassadors for Israel and return to run the streets of Jerusalem in the years to come. John Waggy, CBN News.
Running through history. Well, the man who founded and leads the CBN News Bureau in Jerusalem was honored here in the States Sunday. Chris Mitchell received the Ed McAteer Tree of Life Award at the National Religious Broadcasters Annual Convention in Nashville. The pro-Israel Christian group Proclaiming Justice for the Nations presented Chris with the award in recognition of his reporting from Israel for more than a decade.
2013 Ed McAteer Tree of Life Award presented to Chris Mitchell, Middle East Bureau Chief for CBN, for his commitment to the State of Israel and the Jewish community in the diaspora. This March 3rd, 2013. Chris, thank you so much for your example that you are to so many other media here, and keep up the good work. God bless you.
Chris also hosts the CBN News Internet program every other week from Israel. It's called Jerusalem Dateline. We are very proud of our colleague and friend Chris Mitchell, Pat.
Well, he's an outstanding journalist. He's very highly regarded in Israel among his peers, and he's got such a profound commitment to the state of Israel. It's just remarkable. He's a very attractive guy, and he does a terrific job.
Yeah, our blessing to have him over there.
He really is. Really is.
The government of Iceland wants to block pornography in print and online. The goal is to protect children from violent, hardcore sexual imagery. Pornography has been banned for decades in Iceland, but it was not clearly defined, so the law is not enforced. The new proposals look for methods to uphold the existing law. One route involves a national internet filter. Opponents say the ban will not work and will eliminate freedoms in the process. But Iceland's interior minister said, is it freedom of speech to be able to reach children with very hardcore, brutal material? Is that the freedom of speech we want to protect? In other news, the German 700 Club is averaging 300,000 viewers a week. The program features real-life testimonies, music, and ministry. It airs on 5 cable and satellite channels throughout Germany, Switzerland, and Austria. Nearly 1,000 people called in during one recent month. Some of those callers professed faith in Jesus Christ for the very first time. Others rededicated their lives to the Lord or reported answers to prayer. The German 700 Club has been on the air for 6 years. You can find out more about what CBN is doing around the world by logging on to cbn.com/international.